Perek 436, Taf Lamed Vav. The law for someone who sails by sea or leaves with a caravan. 3 paragraphs. Number 1, if someone sets sail from dry land by sea or leaves with a caravan and does not leave behind at home someone to examine for chametz, to do b'dikah chametz, the ruling is as follows. If he leaves within 30 days of Pesach, that's before Pesach, it's necessary for him to examine his house for chametz beforehand. Then he should not make a blessing, there'll be a chametz over the disposal of chametz. On the other hand, if when he leaves it is prior to 30 days before Pesach, he is not required to examine his house for chametz beforehand. When Pesach is about to arrive, he should nullify the chametz. However, if he has that in mind to return home before Pesach, he is required to examine his house for chametz beforehand and should only leave subsequently, because in such a case we are afraid he may return home on Erev Pesach at the time of being hashmashot and therefore not have sufficient time available to dispose of the chametz. Similarly, if someone stacks a pile in his house, then if he does so within 30 days of Pesach, it is necessary for him to examine the area involved beforehand for chametz, and subsequently he may introduce his pile into the area. On the other hand, if one stacks a pile prior to 30 days before Pesach, then if one has in mind to clear the pile away before Pesach, he is required to examine the area involved for chametz and may subsequently stack the pile on it. But if he does not have in mind to clear the pile away before Pesach, he is not required to examine the area involved for chametz first. The gloss, as regards a pile of wheat which has wheat that has become leavened at the bottom of the pit, the ruling is as follows. If the pile of wheat was stacked 30 days before Pesach, one is not required to dispose of the leavened wheat, but may nullify it in his mind, and this is adequate. But after Pesach, when he clears away the pile, he is forbidden to benefit from the leavened wheat. If there is no known chametz there, then, but one is merely in doubt as to whether or not there is chametz there, he is permitted to sell the pile of wheat as it is, with all the wheat together. Number 2, there are authorities who say that the ruling that when one leaves prior to 30 days before Pesach, he does not need to examine his house for chametz. This applies in any instance when one does not intend to return in the middle of Pesach, i.e., even if he intends to return before Pesach or after Pesach, he does not need to examine his house for chametz when he leaves, once it is prior to 30 days before Pesach. When Pesach is about to arrive, he should nullify the chametz. If, however, he intends to return during Pesach, he must examine his house for chametz, even if he leaves at the beginning of the year. If one forgot in the latter case and did not examine his house for chametz before he left, he should nullify the chametz when Pesach is about to arrive, but should not make a blessing over the nullification. The gloss. His wife should also examine the house for chametz and should nullify the chametz in his house in case in the place where he is he forgets to nullify the chametz himself. Number 3, if a Jew moves out of a non-Jew's house within 30 days of Pesach and moves into a different house in that town or goes to a different town, he is not required to dispose of the chametz in the non-Jew's house, because then he will fulfill the mitzvah of disposing of chametz in the other house. But if he will be setting sail or leaving with a caravan and will not be moving into a house by Pesach, there is an authority who says that then a different ruling applies for in view of the fact that the obligation to dispose of chametz has already become incumbent upon him, since it is already within 30 days of Pesach. He must dispose of the chametz in the non-Jew's house from which he is departing in order to fulfill the mitzvah of disposing of chametz. This applies although the non-Jew will be moving into the house by Pesach. There are authorities who say that he does not need to examine for chametz when the non-Jew will be moving in by Pesach. Perek 437, Taf Lamed Zayin. On whom does the obligation to dispose of the chametz fall when one lets a house to his fellow? If one lets a house to his fellow for use on the 14th of Nisan, and from then onwards, then the hirer acquired the use of the house by one of the methods whereby the hire of the land is acquired, the ruling is as follows. If prior to the handing over of the key to the hirer, the 14th of Nisan fell, the person who let the house is required to make the examination for chametz. If the 14th of Nisan fell after the handing over the key to the hire is required to make an examination. Number 2, if one hires a house from one's fellow on the 14th of Nisan and does not know whether or not it has been examined for chametz, then, if the person who let it is in the town, the hire should ask him whether he in fact examined it for Pesach. If the person who let it is not in town, the house may be presumed to have been examined for chametz. The hire should then nullify in his heart any chametz that may be there, and this is adequate. Number 3, if one let a house presumed to have been examined for chametz to its fellow and it turns out that it was not in fact examined for chametz, the hire is required to examine it for chametz. The hire is not regarded because of this as a false transaction. The hire is not regarded because of this as a false transaction, even in a locality where people hire to examine for chametz for a fee, because by examining for chametz one performs a mitzvah. The gloss. There are authorities who say that the person who let the house must return the fee for the examination to the hirer in view of the fact that he stipulated explicitly that the house had been examined. Number 4, if a house is presumed not to have been examined, then not to have been examined when it was in the hands of the person who let it, and a woman, a slave, or a child says that he or she examined it for chametz, he or she may be trusted. In the case of a child, this only applies if the child has sufficient intelligence to examine for chametz. Yom Tov.